A lot of characters and plot points in Steven Universe got screwed over when Cartoon Network canceled the original series and only gave them 6 episodes to wrap things up. But nothing or no one got screwed over more than White Diamond. The ruler of Homeworld, the leader of the Great Diamond Authority, the final antagonist of the series, the biggest challenge Steven has ever faced. White Diamond carried so much weight, a lot was riding on her character for many fans of the show back in the day. Unfortunately, it felt like the conflict with her was resolved before we could even get the chance to know her. She didn't really have much time to live up to the hype, which definitely contributed to why the end of Steven Universe became so divisive in online spaces. This is the head honcho who's responsible for so much pain and suffering, the source for the cycle of abuse that's perpetuated throughout Homeworld. What do you mean she's dealt with in only 3 episodes? Blue and Yellow are making appearances since season 2. They were given some up-close and personal moments with What's the Use of Feeling Blue and The Trial, moments that explored their characters and laid the groundwork for Steven to work his magic and reunited. And even when they finally stop attacking Steven, they're still antagonists who are helping upkeep Homeworld's flawed system for a few more episodes. It still takes a smidge more drama for Steven to finally get through to them, and it feels earned enough when they finally stand up to White. White, comparatively, only has a brief introduction scene before she attempts to murder a minor, only to get roasted by him 2 seconds later. Time just wasn't on her side here. The Crewniverse had to convey so much about her with so little episodes. And it's a shame because White Diamond truly is a multifaceted character with a lot of depth to her. Like Pink Diamond, she's a cautionary tale. One that warns the viewer of what happens when you constantly live inside your own head, isolating yourself from others and believing your perspective is the only one that matters, even when your actions not only affect the people around you, but the entire universe. We broke down Pink Diamond and Peridot, now let's deep dive into the character that could have been one of Cartoon Network's greatest villains if Steven Universe was given more time to flesh out its ending. Unpacking everything we know about her, Rebecca Sugar's vision for the character, and highlighting her character arc in chronological order. This is White Diamond, the illusion of perfection. Unlike most characters in Steven Universe, I feel like knowing the inspirations behind White Diamond gives you a much deeper understanding of her character. When she made her long overdue debut in Lex Terminator Homeworld, a lot of fans were curious as to why she was not only confined to her ship, but why she was T-posing smack dab in the middle of it like the Statue of Liberty, striking the same Christ-like pose both her and a possessed Pink Pearl were depicted doing prior. What gives? Why did she refuse to break away from this position until she had a complete and utter meltdown? Is it tied to her radiating light? Is this how she pilots her ship? Is this her somehow powering Homeworld itself? The answer to all of those is a resounding no! I mean, maybe the ship thing could still be true, but that's besides the point. Like her isolation, this pose White Diamond is in for 95% of her screen time in the original series is entirely self-inflicted. It's White Diamond quite literally keeping up appearances and repressing her feelings, exerting what she believes to be the image of perfection, emotionless and lifeless. This, and Homeworld's philosophy as a whole, is inspired by a 1946 Kotex-sponsored animation called The Story of Menstruation.
The earliest inspiration for White Diamond goes all the way back to the very, very beginning of the show. She was inspired by a film called The Story of Menstruation, which was made in 1946. Kotex commissioned Disney to do a film to play in schools about what to expect when you begin to menstruate. And it's narrated with this woman's voice, this kindly older woman's voice that talks about how your body is going to change. There's a part where there's a woman at her vanity, she's combing her hair, and she starts to pull her hair, and the narrator is saying that there are going to be times when your mood will fall and where you'll get upset. And as this woman pulls her hair, she tugs it and she starts to just wail and cry, and she puts her head down in her arms and she's sobbing into her arms at her vanity. And this voice says, don't forget that people have to be around you, and you're going to need to be more pleasant if you want people to like you. And you see the reflection in the mirror slowly straighten up and smile, and she fixes her hair, and then it just wipes to another scene where she's out dancing, not too strenuously, of course, that's the right amount. And you leave behind the woman that's sobbing on her vanity. The real her is still crying into her arms. universe, the reflection of her is likable and pleasant and smiling and fixing her hair, but the real her is still sobbing into her arms, and it just goes by. It's not, that's it. It's done. It's correct now that she's out with people, and she can continue to do all the things she normally does, which is mainly cleaning a house. It just felt so interesting to me how warm the narration was, and how nightmarish the content was. The idea that you shouldn't express yourself if you're going through this, that you need to keep up appearances, and all that matters is this reflection of yourself, and how you actually feel must be repressed in order for you to continue to function. And it's just such an interesting artifact. And that was the voice, and that was the feeling. And I remember playing this for Colin in the Black Building in the earliest days of Steven, and just being like, this is what Homeworld is. There are so many elements to what Homeworld is. A lot of it is inspired by Busby Berkeley. White is especially inspired by Hedy Lamarr in Ziegfeld Girl and Nell Brinkley drawings.
In a show that champions the importance of expression and self-discovery, of course the final antagonist would be all about falling in line with the status quo and putting on a facade that masks your flaws by restraining any and all traces of a personality. But this also allows her to challenge two other important aspects of Steven Universe: its focus on family and the fact that it was a newer cartoon at the time, not just in a literal sense, but in the sense that its structure, themes, and representation were all considered pretty bold for a Cartoon Network comedy in the mid-2010s. Ultimately, the show is about family. Steven's loving, supportive family, the Crystal Gems, in contrast to the Diamonds. The Diamonds are essentially parents. The gems that serve them were created by them and are being held to their impossible standards, modeled after cartoon tropes from older generations. The evil stepsisters, the evil queen, Snow Queen, even a little Marvin the Martian. Pink fits into those older tropes too. The restless princess, the little Windsor McKay clown. White Diamond is, for all intents and purposes, a boomer. Someone who firmly believes that her worldview is the only correct one. That a successful society is one that upholds traditional values and keeps the system the way it's always been, even if said system screws over millions of people. The youth of today are a disgrace, with a warped moral code. They all need to be put in line. And damn it, the cartoons in my childhood were just better. Fuck Uncle Grandpa. But all that has me wondering, what are White Diamond's values? What is perfection in her eyes? That's just the thing. I don't think she even knows how to define perfection beyond herself. Just that she has an idea of what it isn't. And to fully expound on that, we'll have to turn the clock all the way back to the beginning and her feud with Pink Diamond. As we went over in the Pink Diamond video, the Great Diamond Authority emerged together 20,000 years ago, an event that split an unknown planet in half. Although piecing two and two together, it's easy to assume that this planet is indeed Homeworld. I'd love to see what that injector looked like, if it was an injector at all. Little is known about their upbringing or who created them, as that information was redacted from the art book. But it seems to be an extensive origin story that Sugar is almost certainly saving for a future installment of the series. But what we do know is that the Diamonds were already appointed to their positions on Homeworld when they were born. And these positions reflect how the Diamonds are meant to act as a unit, as one singular body. Hence their four ships forming a mech. Yellow is physicality, action, force. Her power can manipulate gems physically. Blue is emotion, thought, and culture. Her power can manipulate gems emotionally. White is identity, judgment, and perfectionism. The superego. Her power can manipulate and remove a gem's identity. And pink is pure want, impulse, and desire. She's infectious. She's the flip side of white. She can bring out a gem's hidden personality, their deepest wants. Pink was essentially White's worst nightmare, which is really messed up to say, since Pink was practically her daughter. Someone who held authority over gemkind just like the other Diamonds, but didn't conform to the rules that all gems are supposed to follow. And if she's not following the rules as a gem matriarch, then why should any of the gems on Homeworld abide by them? Also, this leads me to believe that the Diamonds were operating off of little to no instruction from their creator, and thus lacked vital information about their purpose. Because it definitely doesn't make sense that Pink and White were meant to be at odds like this. That Pink was made to not fit into White Diamond's system. Even if Pink's defective, something that I speculated about before, From what we know, that would have mainly affected her physical appearance, not her behavior or capabilities. Amethyst is small, and she's not as strong as Jasper.
I ain't gonna lie, I'm getting cooked.
But according to Bismuth, her weapons are exceptional, and she's been shown to kick ass on numerous occasions. Pink's personality would have been the same, regardless of her size. So if anything, I get the impression that White Diamond assumed the role of leadership and created the system to what she felt was best, not taking into account that Pink's spontaneous nature was meant to serve a greater purpose amongst Gemkind. White and Pink were always clashing. The diamond body repressed Pink's wants, as directed by White, the self-critical conscious. Pink's shield made it impossible for White to override Pink's identity, so she had to find other ways to repress her. Unlike white, yellow, or blue, Pink didn't want to be prim and proper all the time. It was in her nature to be a goofball, to uplift others and encourage them to mold an identity of their own, separate from White. But that disrupts the society the Diamonds had developed on a fundamental level. In White's eyes, gems can't have their own identity. They can only co-opt hers. And she believes this for two reasons. One, because she's the gold standard for gems. If they don't behave like her, then they're falling below that standard. And two, because she genuinely sees all of Gemkind as an extension of herself and vice versa. White believes that because her gem channels white light, she is essentially a gem light form all the time. All gems are made of light, and she is light manifest. She sees all gems as her, sees herself in all gems, and judges them as she would judge herself. She believes she's everyone, which is why she speaks for everyone. But the truth behind her identity powers is that she has no identity at all. She needs other gems to behave as she would. She is very poorly differentiated, and any gem's behavior can be construed by her as a personal attack if they are not behaving as she would. Her identity is so fragile that she can only judge. If she were to act or feel or want, she would open herself up to her own criticism. She has traded that chance to be someone for the power of being everyone. A decision so miserable that everyone on the planet has to suffer for it. White seems to have the mentality that because she's the leader, all gems should have a literal follow the leader mindset and mimic her to the best of their ability. She considers personality traits different from her own to be flaws, as shown in Change Your Mind when she's chastising the crystal gems.
It's written all over their gems. Insecure, dependent, obsessed.
She wants gems to function as cogs in the machine, adamant that they shouldn't display any emotion. It's why they dance so robotically at Pink Diamond's balls. It's the epitome of repress your feelings, keep up appearances, by engaging in the art without using it to express oneself, which makes me question why they would do it at all. Comparing a Homeworld gem dancing to how a crystal gem gets down really says everything you need to know. Since Pink is so curious about the world around her and was assigned to uplift those around her, namely the Diamonds, it makes sense that she would encourage gems to explore themselves and embrace their unique quirks, which innately clashes with White's ideology, an ideology that also puts an immense amount of pressure on Yellow and Blue, who fear White Diamond despite being her colleagues, and in a sense, family. Not even they want to fall short of her expectations and come across as flawed, lest they wind up as puppets under her mind control, which is her method of removing flaws from gems by forcing her light to shine through them. This fed into their stoic and detached demeanor that made them just as feared as they were celebrated throughout Homeworld. White's mentality also explains why Homeworld was set on colonizing the galaxy. White wants everything to be perfect. She thinks she is perfection personified. So if she can spread Gemkind throughout the cosmos, using these extensions of herself to assimilate every planet they can find, then the universe itself will finally be perfect as well. When in reality, Gemkind isn't perfect, and just because organic life is finite, it doesn't mean it's flawed or inherently has less value than the gems. Based on what we know from Blue and Yellow's recollection, alongside the occasional flashback here and there, Pink Diamond was always pushing White's buttons just by being herself. Pink never took anything seriously. She was a big old goofball, which got under White's skin as Pink wasn't behaving the way she would. She wasn't amused by Pink's antics, getting pissed at Pink for dubbing a fresh batch of pyrite fool's gold. And much like Pink Diamond, White has always been shown to have a pretty bad temper, one that seems like it can only be drawn out by Pink and later Steven, much like how White and the other diamonds drew out Pink's temper. Pink would be herself, which was different from White, so White would get upset and respond by repressing Pink, depriving her of validation and keeping her at arm's length, increasing her absence in Pink's life, which only fueled Pink Diamond's desire to be let in and treated as an equal. So long as these two would be at odds, the diamond body would remain at war with itself. And as time progressed, things between these two only got worse. It was the ultimate battle of the heart and the mind. Rebecca Sugar actually put a lot of thought into the diamond's various traits and dynamics, referring to the work of Sigmund Freud in her efforts to shape a compelling story. The Ego and the Id is an analytical study of the human psyche, published by Freud in 1923, and as some fans may already know, the relationships between the diamonds are actually based on this study. The four of them represent the three agents of the psychic apparatus. Pink diamond is the id, blue and yellow are the ego, and white is the superego.
Well, they all exist as a body, which we show very literally with their ships. What happens between them, especially in Change Your Mind, is this one body's experience of embarrassment where the id is coming to the superego and saying, no, this, I want this, I like this, I am this, and the superego is saying no. But that was their dynamic in the past.
Mm-hmm. The id is driven by the pleasure principle, which strives for immediate gratification of all desires, wants, and needs. If these needs are not satisfied immediately, the result is a state of anxiety or tension. Yeah, that definitely sounds like Pink Diamond. For example, an increase in hunger or thirst should produce an immediate attempt to eat or drink. Immediately fulfilling these needs is not always realistic or even possible. If we were ruled entirely by the pleasure principle, we might find ourselves grabbing the things we want out of other people's hands to satisfy our cravings. The id is very important early in life because it ensures that an infant's needs are met. If the infant is hungry or uncomfortable, they will cry until the demands of the id are satisfied. Young infants are ruled entirely by the id. There is no reasoning with them when these needs demand satisfaction. Although people eventually learn to control the id, this part of the personality remains the same infantile primal force throughout life. It is the development of the ego and the superego that allows people to control the id's basic instincts and act in ways that are both realistic and socially acceptable. You can definitely draw parallels to both Pink and Season 1 Steven, and breaking it down like this is a great way to pinpoint the key difference between how the diamonds handled Pink and how the crystal gems raised Steven. As we get older, the ego and superego help calm down the id, but the id's needs are still met eventually, like how the crystal gems gradually gave Steven more responsibilities and did their best to help hone his powers. But White, for the longest time, was doing her best to just ignore Pink and avoid giving her any sort of responsibility. She, as the superego, never wanted to satisfy the id, just repress it until it falls in line, depriving the whole body of what it needs by doing so, which only bred more tension and toxicity. Tension that Yellow and Blue did their best to smooth over as the ego. The ego develops from the id and ensures that the impulses of the id can be expressed in a manner acceptable in the real world. It's the personality component responsible for dealing with reality. The ego operates based on the reality principle, which strives to satisfy the id's desires in realistic and socially appropriate ways. The reality principle weighs the cost and benefits of an action before deciding to act upon or abandon impulses. It is the part of your personality that keeps you grounded in reality and prevents the id and superego from pulling you too far towards your basic urges or moralistic virtues. Having a strong ego means having a strong sense of self-awareness. Freud compared the id to a horse and the ego to the horse's rider. The horse provides power and motion, while the rider provides direction and guidance. Without its rider, the horse would wander wherever it wished and do whatever it pleased. The rider gives the horse directions and commands to get it where it wants to go. This fits Yellow and Blue to a T, trying to satisfy Pink Diamond without causing its scene in front of the other gems or upsetting White Diamond. basically helping Pink keep up appearances. When they had to deal with business, they would ignore Pink Diamond and try to keep her quiet until they were done, but then compensate by playing games with her. Another example would be Pink's desire for more responsibilities. While they wouldn't let her command a dropship or anything crazy, they'd let her name batches of gems. Little things that would make her decisions feel important, even though that just gave her bigger aspirations in the long run. Going off of this, we can assume that our Pearl and Spinel were solutions proposed by Yellow and Blue to please both Pink and White. Pink has a garden that's out of sight from the rest of Homeworld, and a playmate that can tend to Pink's needs whenever she wants. And when she's not at the garden, she's tending to her duties and acting like the Diamond White expects her to be. Everybody wins! And circling back to White, we have the superego. The superego holds the internalized moral standards and ideals that we require from our parents and society, our sense of right and wrong. It provides guidelines for making judgments. The superego tries to perfect and civilize our behavior. It suppresses all the id's unacceptable urges and struggles to make the ego act upon idealistic standards rather than on realistic principles. If you give in to the urges of the id, the superego is what will cause you to feel a sense of guilt or even shame about your actions. The superego may help you feel good about your behavior when you suppress your most primal urges. Of course, this plays perfectly into White Diamond seeing herself as everyone and everyone as herself, holding everyone to her standards, seeing any display of individuality as something morally reprehensible. If she wouldn't do it, then it's simply illogical and worthy of discipline. An individual with an overly dominant id might become impulsive, uncontrollable, or even criminal, such as individual acts upon their most basic urges with no concern for whether their behavior is appropriate, acceptable, or legal. On the other hand, an overly dominant superego might lead to a personality that is extremely moralistic and judgmental. A person ruled by the superego might not be able to accept anything or anyone that they perceive to be bad or moral. The Diamonds, as a body, were always going to be at war with themselves because they were always going to want different things. Yellow and Blue did their best to play both sides, but things only continued to spiral out of control because neither Pink nor White were ever going to be content with one another. White was never going to give Pink the validation she deserved, and Pink was never going to sacrifice her sense of self to appease White. So White continued to abuse Pink by having her locked up in her tower, isolated from her gems. And if what Yellow says to Steven and Lex from the Homeworld is any indication, Pink might even have been bubbled by White before. But this was the only mention of it, so we can't say for certain. This abuse only frustrated Pink. It didn't encourage her to change, obviously. It was Pink's own actions that prompted a change once she mistakenly damaged her original Pearl, learning to keep secrets and put on a facade in the aftermath, leading the Diamonds to believe that she was conforming to White's standard. White Diamond never fully bought into this facade, but still gave Pink the acknowledgement she longed for. White matches Pink's facade with one of her own, agreeing to Yellow and Blue's request to award Pink with a colony of her own, only to prove that she hasn't really changed. She gave Pink the Earth just to prove that it'll fail, also adopting Pink Pearl by taking control of her, which I suppose was her solution to quote-unquote fixing her and removing her flaws. But as shown later in the series, she used White Pearl as a way to communicate with Pink without giving her the satisfaction of talking directly. Not only would this get under Pink's skin, but it would rub salt in the wound by constantly presenting Pink with the pearl she's scarred and discarded, even if both of those things weren't her intent. Now, White Diamond already comes across as a cruel, petty bitch, but I think things really take a turn for the worse after Pink wanted out from Earth. Because if what's stated in the art book is still true, which the show seems to imply that it is, then White allowed countless of gems to get fucked up just to prove a point to Pink, blissfully unaware that Pink Diamond is going through something serious, and that she herself is the source of so much suffering. She's absent when Yellow and Blue encourage Pink to not give up on her colony just because of Rose Quartz, and it's not due to White wanting Pink to just figure it out on her own. It's due to White seeing right through the act and suspecting that Pink was Rose Quartz. She was the original cartoon theorist. She viewed the gem war as one big stunt and didn't say a thing to Yellow and Blue. As stated in Sugar's secret character timeline, White knows Pink is out there. This expensive, embarrassing tantrum is not worth her attention. Pink will come groveling back when she's done running away from home. You're telling me this hag let Blue and Yellow become massively depressed, and for Blue to become borderline inefficient at her job just to get one over on Pink? I know Yellow and Blue aren't saints. It's not like they deserve sympathy, but also Jesus Christ, lady. You could have let them in on your theory. She probably didn't, because she didn't want Blue running to Earth and bringing back Pink herself. She only wanted to see Pink come crawling back humbled and humiliated. Which means, not only did she let her gems fight in the war, letting them destroy each other, but she also faked her own grief and carried out the corruption blast alongside Yellow and Blue, scrambling the minds of thousands of gems, some rebels and some loyal Homeworld servants, leaving them as confused, violent animals for 5,000 years. Assuming that Pink would survive thanks to her shield, but that wasn't a guarantee. Imagine if Rose didn't use her shield in time? She could have wound up just like her teammates, and it would have been on White for not saying anything sooner. Instead, she let the other diamonds get consumed by a tsunami of horrible emotions and nuke their kid into the next millennium. And then she allowed Yellow to carry out the cluster, meaning that if Pink was alive by the point it emerged, she would have either been destroyed with the planet or forced back to Homeworld, which means she wouldn't have come crawling back, but White would have almost certainly spun it that way. So, White, what's good with you, my nigga? Now, I do think a part of White, deep down, was afraid that Pink Diamond was gone for good. A fear that would ultimately prove to be true. Judging by how everyone talks about her during the Era 3 arc, it seemed like after Pink staged her shattering, White Diamond grew all the more distant from Yellow and Blue, spending most of her time alone in her ship, isolated from Homeworld, relying on White Pearl to get work done and make appearances on her behalf. Basically FaceTiming in, alright, I see you, Wade from Kim Possible, that one teacher from Nesta Classified head ass. Average Discord user. Not only did White isolate herself from everyone, living in her own head and shutting out the people closest to her, but she also let Homeworld fall apart a little bit. She didn't seem to care much about Era 2's resource crisis. And if that crisis was a result of Pink's absence, then if you ask me, White should have definitely shouldered some of the responsibility. She probably let things get that bad so she could have another thing to throw back in Pink Diamond's face should she ever come back to Homeworld. And hey, we have limit answers, so maybe the problem just fixed itself. But maybe this was also a symptom of a bigger problem White was dealing with. Her tendency to live in complete denial, which was only amplified once Pink Diamond was gone. It led her to denying that Homeworld was dealing with any major problems, and the Avid Live enhancers were just treated like a band-aid. White clearly began to miss Pink and was eager to have her home, even if she was driven by her need to exert control. Because once a few thousand years flew by, and Steven came knocking on her door, she was quick to have the diamonds fall back into familiar patterns. Throughout all of Steven Universe, White Diamond is absent from the events of the story. Steven goes on trial for his mother's war crimes. No White Diamond. The diamonds come to Earth to retrieve the cluster and crush the crystal gems. No White Diamond. Was this lady even alive? Yes. And we find out she was out of the picture for so long because she thought she was giving Pink Diamond the silent treatment. Yikes. The brief exchange she has with Steven is already creepy the first time around, but given everything we know now, like the fact she's capable of having a normal conversation, it feels all the more unsettling. Bombarding Steven with what feels like a rehearsed, passive-aggressive scolding to Pink Diamond before forcefully moving Steven to the palace, making her disappointment and anger known without actually displaying any emotion, and undermining all of Pink Diamond's efforts by reducing the liberation of Earth and the Diamond Corruption Blast as just Pink's latest little game. Which, let me reiterate, White contributed to the Gem War. She knew how dire things were getting and the impact it left on Homeworld as a whole. She's calling that a little game and pinning all of the responsibility on Pink Diamond. Christ. It's manipulation that would have bombed, but she manages to get under Steven's skin because at this point, he isn't secure in his identity. He still doesn't know who he is, and he's under the impression that he can get through to White Diamond. But she's just not on the same page as him, so her gaslighting is unfortunately pretty effective on Steven. When Steven shows up, White, Yellow, and Blue fall back into a familiar pattern. Pink is here with a new thing she wants, and they think she's more unreasonable and dangerous to the status quo than ever. What they don't understand is that Steven isn't Pink. He's bringing humanity into the equation. He's trying to introduce it himself to them, and they can't even begin to understand him. What he wants, in addition to helping the gems on Earth, is just to be treated like a person. This is not unreasonable or impulsive, but the diamond body keeps punishing itself like it always has, for wanting something that White has deemed inappropriate. In order to ensure Pink never disrupts the status quo again, not realizing that Steven's mere existence shatters the status quo, White Diamond wants to strip Pink Diamond of all autonomy, but she knows that Pink's shield nullifies her mind control. So the alternative is what we see in the Era 3 arc, giving Steven the illusion of choice and the illusion of freedom, but keeping him confined to Pink Diamond's palace unless he's supervised by Pearl or the Diamonds. And of course, she keeps Steven as far away from her as possible, which includes not showing up to the ball, something I imagine she did with Pink constantly. She also uses White Pearl to keep an eye on Steven, which initially confuses him, but thanks to his strange dreams and witnessing White's power firsthand, he quickly pieces together that White Pearl is actually Pink Pearl, his mom's original right-hand gem. But like, again, this is White trying to throw Pink's mistakes back in her face. She can't fathom that Steven straight up isn't Pink. So after saying, "I'm glad you're home, don't ever do that shit again, but everything's cool," she wanted to haunt Pink and make it known through her old Pearl that everything, in fact, wasn't cool. There's still beef, there's still friction, but the thing is, it's not Steven's beef. He's been mistaken for his mom throughout the entire series, dealing with her baggage. But out of all those conflicts, it's safe to say that this one takes the cake. How can he get through to White Diamond, someone who thinks she's right about everything, if he can't prove to her that he is Steven Universe and not Pink Diamond? Because as far as White's concerned, Pink just deluded herself into believing she's Steven. Steven can't not be Pink because that conflicts with White's own identity. Steven has to slowly work his way up to the toxic identity of the Diamonds, personified by White. Ultimately, he needs to upend White's authority and change her identity. As long as White asserts herself as the standard for all gems, any gem that challenges her idea of herself will be in danger. All of Steven's efforts to change the Great Diamond Authority is countered by White Diamond literally weaponizing her beliefs and removing everyone's autonomy. Getting Yellow and Blue to question their beliefs was no easy feat, and although they were terrified of White, a part of them had to believe that their words did have merit and could make a difference for them to stand up to her. It took a lot for them to criticize their way of living, yet White just zaps them into puppets. Steven can only accomplish his mission if he himself gets through to White Diamond. But again, he's not immune to her manipulation. He shares the same identity crisis his mom had, which validates White Diamond's harmful beliefs. Steven is now the id, and he has no idea how to get the superego to understand that his needs are worth taking seriously, especially now that the superego has overpowered the ego. That is, until White Diamond pulls out Steven's gem.
Where is Pink?
She's gone! If you're a kid in Steven's position and you need to speak that truth to power, I can't think of a better story to tell than one where the kid in that position has the power to tell their authority figure who they are and mean it and have them understand it. To me, that's just really special about the scene, and it's really real and just important.
The foundation of the show is the idea that simple human truths can be more astonishing and beautiful and powerful than fantasy. We wanted to build to this moment where Steven being Steven was the ultimate reveal. The power of him being himself, the simple fact that he actually definitely exists, obliterates White's authority and her identity. Because if she is everyone and everyone is her, then her wrongness about him is a wrongness about herself and everyone and everything. Ultimately, her identity is so fragile and she's so poorly differentiated that Steven is able to defeat her by existing. By this point in the video, you probably see how hard it was for the Universe to do White Diamond as a character justice with the few episodes they were given to wrap up the story. But I believe, even in an expanded version of the Era 3 arc that got to be as many episodes as it needed, the reveal of Pink Steven still would have been the perfect resolution to the Diamond conflict. That all it took to undermine White Diamond's authority was to simply prove her wrong once. Not through an argument or a high-stakes balls-to-the-walls anime fight, but through her own actions. She, as the superego, had to prove herself wrong, to recognize that the id wasn't just being impulsive or irresponsible, to open herself up to criticism, to listen to the id, and take its needs into consideration. Once White's reality is shattered by Steven, she's finally able to put her guard down and leave her own head. And although White was able to help cure the corrupted gems, dismantle colonies, and eventually step down from power, there's one thing she'll never be able to fix: her relationship with Pink Diamond. This is a big part of what makes White Diamond a cautionary tale. While I definitely wouldn't say that I sympathize with White, because these are simply the consequences of her own actions, I still recognize that her story is a tragedy. She pushed away someone who was an essential part of her because she didn't live up to her standards, assuming that eventually, things will go back to the way they've always been. But they didn't. While White assumed that Pink was just trying to get her attention, sitting around in her ship for thousands of years, Pink reinvented herself. She became Rose Quartz and lived a whole new life before choosing to give birth to her child, Steven, passing on in the process. White Diamond represents a lot of things, but one of those things I believe she represents is something that sadly happens far too often in real life. A parent unable to accept their child for whatever reason, and never getting the chance to reconnect with them before one of them kicks the bucket, because they were too stubborn to challenge their own worldview. Having a change of heart once it's too late to smooth things over. White only tries to do right by Pink once she knows that she's gone, as if she's trying to atone for the way she treated her, but she can never have Pink back. And although the Diamonds try to use Steven as a replacement, he wants to keep their distance from them outside of business. If it's not about saving the galaxy, then he wants nothing to do with them. It's kind of funny, now White Diamond is the one seeking validation. No longer leading Gemkind and having limited access to Steven, we're left with only one question. If she doesn't have Steven around as an incentive, can White Diamond truly change? Over the 2-year time skip between Change Your Mind and the movie, White Diamond makes a half-hearted effort to improve as a person, as she's mostly just trying to appease Steven. She's performing good deeds and healing the universe, but it's as clear as day that her personality is still kinda shitty. Although she no longer gets the ick from surrounding herself around other gems and humans, she still clearly sees herself as a superior being. And she does a horrible job of hiding it with her fake nice attitude.
Judging anything based on appearance is wrong.
However, after adopting Spinel and spending some time away from Steven, White Diamond has a breakthrough and discovers a brand new power that recontextualizes her beliefs and identity in a positive and meaningful way. Instead of taking control of other gems, she allows other gems to take control of her, allowing them to get in touch with themselves. She still embraces the notion that she is everyone and everyone is her. But instead of using this to assert her own beliefs, she's opening herself up to different perspectives while helping gems sort through their own issues, especially when it comes to self-image. White pitches it to Steven as a chance for someone to talk to themselves. It's meant to be therapeutic, getting a good look at yourself from someone else's perspective, while also getting the chance to be a 50-foot tall goddess. I mean, who wouldn't want that? Although this backfires horribly on Steven. Despite aligning herself with different points of view on a daily basis, White still has a habit of making everything about herself, even if she doesn't intend to. The best example of this being in I Am My Monster, when she really wants everyone to know that Steven's meltdown is her fault, because of the domino effect she caused by starting the cycle of abuse. There's a lot of narcissistic qualities to her that couldn't be dealt with in only 2 years, which is why if Steven Universe continues in the future, I think White could still have some development. I want to see her put in a situation where her progress and beliefs are challenged. If her creators come back into the picture, would she seek their validation or try to educate them like Steven educated her? What would her response to their return mean for Steven and the rest of the galaxy? It truly is a shame that White got the short end of the stick when it came to on-screen development, because her absence from the story is a huge part of her character, but even so, she definitely still needed a few more scenes here and there to make the events of Change Your Mind as compelling to the viewer as it was to the Crewniverse. But I don't want to harp on missed potential, because like White Diamond, we can't change the past, but we can open ourselves up to new perspectives. So if you were someone who felt underwhelmed by White Diamond all those years ago, I hope this video enables you to see her character in a brand new light, and that you have a better understanding of what Rebecca Sugar was going for. I know the bigger issue for some is the fact that the Diamonds were imprisoned, and while I do think where they ended up was another result of the series being pressed for time, I do also think that on some level, ending the series with the id repressing the ego and the superego would have been counterintuitive. The superego finally recognizing the id's needs is the ending that works best, in my opinion. But we're getting into an entirely different conversation, so to wrap things up, what are your thoughts on White Diamond's character? Let us know in the comments down below. And keep the conversation going over on Twitter and Instagram at AwestruckVox and at Roundtable Vids. Consider supporting us over at Patreon for just $1 a month. Check out Toondrip for some dope Steven Universe-inspired merch. And if you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe to the Roundtable for more great cartoon content. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. See ya!